Now, chivalry. This isn't something that we just invented. This isn't something that we knights got together and said, this would be a good idea. No, this is something passed down from generation to generation. Knights of past learned of a song called the Song of Roland. And this was a song that described what it meant to be a knight. Now, this song spoke of great deeds and heroics, men of great strength and valor, but it also spoke of men who were kind to the weak, of men who defended the helpless, of men who treated women with respect, who loved God and their Lord above all, and who never backed down from a fight. This code is something that has never been forgotten, and it's something that, God willing, will never be forgotten. This code describes a lifestyle. It is not merely something that we do when we feel like it. It is what it means to be a knight, to be chivalrous, to be gentle and strong at the same time, to be meek and yet ferocious. Now, this at the same time is a difficult thing to do. We are knights, we are trained to fight, but we are also trained to care and protect. Now, this chivalry, this is what makes us a knight on the inside. What makes us a knight on the outside is something very different. That is where we have trained young boys like my page to be soldiers, to be warriors of God and King. Now, we train our men and our knights with weapons, weapons of war, weapons such as this, the sword, a fine weapon made of sharp steel, made for slashing and stabbing. And this is how the enemies of God are brought to their knees. Now, this is not the only weapon we will use. We will use the spear. We will use the lance on our horseback so we can charge at the enemy. We will use mace and flail. There are many, many different weapons that not only we can use, but we are taught to use. Because a knight must always be ready in battle when he's facing a foe. If I were to drop my sword, I must be ready and trained to use anything before me as a weapon. But if we have so many of these weapons, how then are we to protect ourselves? Well, that is this fine mail you see. Now, this mail, it is to protect against the cut. When I'm wearing it, I am protected against swords, axes, daggers. However, I'm not as protected against pointy things like arrows. That's why we have to get better armor. We have to invent plate armor. And that way we can wear heavy metal covering our entire bodies to protect us from anything. Plate mail is closer to my helmet, a solid piece of steel that you cannot stab into. These things, they protect us and they keep us safe on the field of battle. And why must we battle so much? Because this is Europe. Now we, you and I, we are French. We answer to the King of France, a mighty king, I must say. Across the river yonder, those are Germans. The princes of Germany. They want to take whatever they can, and I can't blame them. We French lords and knights, we take what we can too. Europe is all about war. We take what our neighbors have because we can. There's really no better way of putting it. And because of that, we must all train for war. Even the lonely farmers are trained to be men-at-arms, not nearly as effective as we knights, but still dangerous in their own right. Now, if the Germans are coming constantly and we're fighting them constantly, then where are we supposed to go after that? Well, we've spent hundreds of years fighting each other. The English, the French, the Spaniards, we're all fighting constantly over these tiny morsels of land of no real importance. Now that's why there are crusades. Now the crusades are a magnificent thing that the Pope has called. Now, we being good Catholics, when the Pope calls, we answer. And so, in 1092, Pope Francis has issued a decree that we must take back the Holy Land from the Muslims. Now, this isn't going to be an easy task by any means. We'll be at it for hundreds of years. This is a huge endeavor. Now, the biggest part is getting there. How do we cross all of Europe when we're all fighting? Well, that's the thing. Pope Francis has not only called for us to go on this crusade, but he has called all Catholic brothers to put down their arms against each other. to stop fighting each other and start fighting the enemy. And because of that, getting to the Middle East will be easy. That's the easy part. Crossing hundreds of miles of desert and mountains is easy. Once we get there, we have to convince Constantinople to let us through their gates. This is not an easy task because Constantinople has grown untrusting of us Europeans, and with good reason. We tend to try to take them over whenever we get bored. So because of that, we'll have to convince him quite handily that we won't take his land. And once we do that, he will let us through his mighty gates and we will cross into Asia, the Middle East. And we will come upon Tripoli, Acre, and Jerusalem. And once we get there, we will fight the Saracens, the Turks, the Muslims. We will fight them tooth and nail for the Holy Land, because it is the birthplace and death of Christ. Jerusalem and Bethlehem, these places are sacred, and we must take them by force. And so we shall fight, as I said, for hundreds of years, because it is what we are called to do. We are called by the Pope and by God to fight, and so we must. And for hundreds of years we shall battle back and forth, and we shall take Jerusalem, and we shall lose it, and we shall face a mighty foe, Salahuddin. The English, then their poor mispronunciations, call him Saladin. Sounds like a salad if you ask me. But he is a mighty and cunning warrior, a man who makes us tremble at our very core. And we are not faint of heart, we are strong, bold men. And we're afraid of Salahuddin because he's brilliant. And he will sweep over us time and again, and we will rage back. And for hundreds of years we'll fight and we'll gain land and we'll lose land. And in the end, we lose. Because we're so far from home and there's so many problems back in Europe that we must constantly face that we have to go back. We must leave the Holy Land and focus on France and on Germany and on England and Spain. And that is our home, and we must focus on home. Now all of these things are nothing compared to what we have on our own doorstep. Jerusalem is owned by the Muslims, the Seljuk Turks, yes, but that is Jerusalem, hundreds of miles away, at our own very doorstep, in the bird. So we're gonna splice that.